Hey, yes, it is time to stream today. I had to postpone a little bit. I guess Cheshire is doing a stream. I didn't want to step on her, but I guess she's wrapping it up soon. And they've got a few people over there, but they can come over here when they finish with that. And Cheshire's more than welcome to come join us. So, yeah, I kind of need you guys' help. I am doing a show on Agree to Argue on the 10th of this month. And it is with Dr. Fuzz Rana. I don't think it's with anybody else, although I'm still trying to find somebody. I'm still trying to find somebody that has some credentials that preferably is a atheist or non-believer, that knows the Bible fairly well and that knows science fairly well, that can kind of bring up some of the things that seem to be contradictions in the Bible as far as Bible and science. Now, I already know reasons to believe argumentation. I already know how they view these things. They're not really a concordance like some other groups are, like General Han Solo is, if you know who he is. He kind of thinks that the Bible was God's way of explaining things to people in a very basic way, precept upon precept, where the science was correct, but they just didn't understand at the time. Now, clearly, I don't agree with that. I think it's kind of nonsensical to say that God did it that way, but whatever. But for the most part, they do believe in inerrancy of the Bible, or the facts that they claim would be that the Bible doesn't have really any errors in it per se. I mean, I'm sure that they probably agree there's some translation issues. I mean, I've looked at numerous Bibles that have numerous different ways of saying something, and the fact that language is messy, the fact that words change between Bible and Bible does have different connotations to what is being described. And so it's one of those things where if you want to say, oh, this relates to a specific thing in science, I could find a passage for it in some version of some Bible that may or may not have something to do with it, that seems to have an indication that the Bible is talking about science, right? And that's what I think there's a kind of a game that a lot of theists play. And they don't do that. I'm not saying that Agree to Argue does. I'm not saying that Fuzz or Reasons to Believe does that at all. Matter of fact, I think they kind of agree that some of the things that people say are scientific evidence in the Bible are kind of silly too. They accept that there's a book of Scripture, which they call the Bible, and then the book of Revelation and book of things from God, right? Book of nature kind of thing, and that's the Bible, right? So they do accept as multiple different sources. There's non-overlapping magisteria, as Stephen J. Gould would probably say. But I kind of wanted to see if you guys could help me come up with some specifics of what to talk about in this particular debate, because I don't know the Bible. So I know we've got Milwaukee Atheist out there, and I know we've got Josiah and other people out there. Josiah's on the road, so I don't think he's able to call in. But the link is in the video description. You're more than welcome to come in and help me out. I did put up here a little thing that I found to kind of get us started, and hopefully you could read it. But it's how many coincidences does it take? And it says the Bible, science then, science now. And then it concludes, until one concedes that there's no such thing. And of course, I have looked at some of these passages. They don't say what it says, and if it does, it's certainly in line with the connotation to imply anything was anything scientific. Generalities are not science. So if I say, hey, the earth is large, hey, science predicts the earth is large, science is correct. That's not really a specified or specific thing that we would predict, right, in science to make it to show that, we do have an understanding of this and the Bible predicted this. No. Even Reasons to Believe, I think, agrees that the Bible was written by a bunch of people that didn't know a lot of things. But what they did know was certain things, like the earth was round. They did know that back then. Now, there was people out there that, thought the earth was flat, I'm sure, but Aristophanes was long before Jesus, and so I'm pretty sure that they had a pretty good understanding of that, even though in some places it does indicate it is round, some places it indicates it's flat, but anyways, so let's kind of dive into this, and maybe this is kind of go where I'm going to go during the discussion. Like even the first one of these things, right? The earth is a sphere. Now, when I looked that up for Isaiah 22, it actually says something along the lines of God rests upon the circle of the earth, right? Well, anybody knows geometry that a sphere is not a circle, all right? A circle is a cross-section of a sphere, a two-dimensional plane representation of a sphere, right? So they're not the same things, right? So I don't even know how they would twist it. Now, again, I want to make it very clear that Reasons to Believe doesn't do this, so I don't expect them to argue these things. But I, as the non-believer on the show, want to be able to like point out things that, look, nothing in the Bible was ever supposed to be treated as some kind of science. Matter of fact, young creationists have made that fatal flaw from day one, right? Because they say not only the Bible, inerrant, it is an actual true account of things, including scientific things like the flood or something, right? When we know that didn't happen, right? We know that there was no such thing as a flood. Maybe a local flood. Okay, sure, there might have been some kernel of truth, but wasn't some global flood that 8 people survived, and they had an ark that carried all these animals. I mean, that's just ludicrous from the get-go. And the fact that the Bible doesn't state that as some miracle, right? It doesn't say, hey, look, God created a miracle and created an ark and sustained all these animals and took care of them for a year. It doesn't say any of that. It assumes that there's a naturalistic story to be had there that is completely possible naturalistically. And so when young earth creationists try to use the Bible as science, it just doesn't work. Completely doesn't work. So I don't know exactly where the Reasons to Believe is going to go on this for Dr. Fuzzrunner. But he is a legit scientist, obviously, and he is a biochemist. But where do you think of some good arguments here? Like, even like the innumerable stars cannot be counted. Science back then, only 1,100 stars. Well, that's only what they could see visibly, right? But I mean, I'm sure they could deduce that that certain times of the season they can see more stars than other. When they go to a clearer sky, they can see more stars. So it's not irrational for them to say, "Hey, look, these are uncountable," right? I mean, if you were a person living, thousands of years ago, and you walked outside at a very clear night, and somebody said, "Hey, can you do me a favor and count all these stars?" You'd be like, well, they're uncountable. That doesn't mean they're not actually countable. There actually is a finite number of stars in the universe, right? That is a countable number. It's not an infinite number of stars. And what we mean by countable is that it has a 1-to-1 correspondence or bijection to the natural numbers. So I don't think that in any way shows that science is somehow progressing, right? These are yes, it's observational. Sure, absolutely. We observe there's more stars. We get better equipment like telescopes. We observe there's more stars. We find there's Andromeda is a galaxy which has millions of stars. And by the way, no, Ronnie doesn't really deny human evolution per se. He does and he doesn't. He believes there's a special creation for humans that is true. But I mean, that doesn't disqualify him as a scientist. I just think that he has an incorrect belief. I do take it out of the realm of science, but that's his own personal belief. So, I don't really have an issue with that. But of course, there's a huge thing to be discussed on that, clearly. Oh, my Lord and Savior has arrived. Hi, Lord and Savior. I'm not going to show you in case other people show up, so sorry, you don't need to be on camera.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I put the public
that
link
would
out.
drive viewers away from your stream anyways.
Well, you look gorgeous, though.
Oh, thank you. I showered recently.
See, here on this show, unlike other shows, we are just fine with giving compliments to the ways people look. Or if you think they look like shit, I don't give a fuck. Hey, Lawrence, you look like crap.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
No, you look good. So yeah, it's appreciated, and in some cases mandatory. When Shush comes on, you have to compliment her, or else she gets upset. So, but trust me, you look like you got prepped for this.
Well, considering I've been studying this for a while, I think this is the only thing I have ever been prepped for. So.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, this is your field. I saw that you posted something the other day. We were like, hey, Leo, I'm an atheist and I actually study the Bible, which again, I don't get, but I'm not a judge of it. I mean, it's if somebody wants to study it and think it's a great literary history, I'm all for that. It is not as simple as people make it out to be. That's for damn sure. I've been on your show and I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I don't. I just read. I just read from it. I don't know any of this. I realize how little I know about the Bible when I go on your show. It's bad.
It's the Bible is there's so much stuff and it gets like more and more complicated the deeper you go, and it's a hell of a rabbit hole. Yes,
it is. Somebody had asked, was Rez ever complimented on his looks? No, that is because that is a metaphysical necessity that you cannot compliment him. I don't. You guys probably have never seen him. I know what he looks like. I mean, I've known the guy for like 7 years. I know everything about him. He is uglier than sin. I mean, the guy looks it's like you take his face, stuck it in battery acid, rubbed it against asphalt, then burned it. I mean, it's not pretty, but hey, he does okay for himself. Can't complain. He's no Milwaukee atheist, that's for sure. But,
No luscious locks.
yes. So okay, so what do you want to help me out with this? Where do you think I should kind of go in the discussion of because they're kind of looking at me going, okay, you're the non-believer. What do you have about the Bible that is either unscientific or just doesn't correlate to what we know scientifically, and how do we kind of resolve those things for the believer to do?
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier the flood. That's just not a thing, like a global flood.
Well, they don't accept
Sorry.
that as a global, but they don't accept that either. They do accept that as some kind of allegorical statement, a story or something like that. Which
that's good.
Yeah, so I don't know if we could have to dive into that kind of stuff because they're going to run off the back. Oh yeah, we agree that's not science.
Great. Okay. So the thing about the Bible is, you mentioned earlier, it's not a science book. It barely makes any claims about science. So one thing you could point out is how they would heal skin diseases in Leviticus, for example.
Leviticus. Okay, I know where Leviticus is at least.
Yeah, very. It's a law code basically, and the thing is, it's actually a legal code. Like it's not like it's based off of other ancient Near Eastern legal codes.
Okay, so that would be Leviticus 13. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when anyone has a swelling or rash or bright spot on his skin that may be an infectious skin disease, he may be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons who is a priest. Now, wait a minute. They actually knew that it was they actually knew it was a skin disease?
Well, the thing is, a lot of translations usually use leprosy, although it's unclear what skin disease it was. But something's up with the person's skin.
Yeah, let me get. What do you prefer? You prefer the NIV, right?
Yeah, NIV is fine.
I prefer the King James, but everybody says it's shit. So the NIV says, the priest is whenever anyone has a swelling or rash or bright spot on his skin that may become infectious skin disease, he may be brought. Yeah, okay, that is it. So the priest is to examine the sore in his skin, and if the hair in his sore has turned white and the sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious skin disease. And they thought that was leprosy. Now I understand. They probably didn't understand what the disease was. They understood that things were contagious. They understood that these things did have some kind of vector transfer from one to another. That's why they burn and wash the clothes or something, right?
Sure. But more specifically, the cure for leprosy, the cure for skin diseases. It's kind of a long passage, and I forget the exact verses. But you're gonna need some birds, and you're gonna need a ritual.
Well, that makes sense.
You're gonna have somebody pretty much locked up in a room for a week. Now,
why do you think they came up with this, right? I mean, I don't think most people would probably say, well, God said this was the cure, right? Because it didn't cure, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be bad for God to say something, hey, this is a cure, and it doesn't happen, because then God would be considered to be a liar. So one, why did they come up with it? Two, why did they not realize it didn't work? And how would people justify that this was somehow from God, or would they say, look, that was just man's way of thinking of how to fix it? It wasn't from God.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from ritual purity. So, like there are plenty of other verses in Leviticus, especially that like if you touch like a dead body, then you need to cleanse yourself. You need to ritualistically cleanse yourself because the body has been tainted somehow on a spiritual level.
So it wasn't merely just because they thought there was some actual.
Well, I think they would have noticed that if you you could get something from a dead body, and of course it's not exactly science. It's more of they draw that connection. It's kind of like this ecological kind of knowledge where you just kind of come about it just by living. Like if you touch like a hot stove, you're just not going to touch it again.
Yeah, of course. It's experiential. Yeah. It is a priori knowledge that we observe. Although they may not have been able to explain it, they did observe this was a bad thing to do.
Yeah. So I think that would like I think the ritualistic cleansing kind of thing, keeping the body clean, uh, was important because they didn't want to catch something, but they also thought that it would have been because they didn't understand these things. They didn't have a germ theory of disease, right? Like because they didn't understand these things, they came up with this way to kind of it worked for them, I suppose. Like basically, you get somebody away, and then they can't, infect anybody else. Uh, so it kind of helps symptomatically, but it's not going to get rid of the skin disease. Although I have to say again, it's unclear what skin disease it actually was.
Maybe they weren't even able to differentiate.
Right.
Yeah. No,
Because I don't
I
know.
think you're
I'm
right.
not a doctor, so
Yeah, and they're obviously, their understanding of medicine back then was nil, but I mean, they did understand disease, right, and pestilence. So they knew something. They, could have been though. They thought disease was more, like you said, a spiritual thing
Mhm.
rather than a biological thing.
Yeah. I mean, keeping especially in a text like Leviticus, keeping everything pure was like
Which is why you had to clean it. You
super
had
important.
to wash it, right? You had to wash their clothes because you're keeping it pure, right? You're cleansing.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. Of course, Leviticus is a huge book with a lot of laws, many of which are about ritual purity.
And that's another thing I'll probably touch on when we do this on the agree to argue is that we all, I think, agree that when you're reading these passages, you do so, with the intent of the writer, the time period, right? You do eisegesis rather than exegesis. If you're going to try to understand the intent of the writer. So the intent of the writer, the mindset of Leviticus 13, you're saying, look, they're not actually promoting any actual science. What they're saying is this is what we observe. This is what we think will fix it. This is what, we know we're going to get sick, and it's probably a spiritual type thing. But is there anything in Leviticus that says God told them to have these cure in order to fix it?
Well, I mean, the whole point about the laws and the 600, there's 613 of them,
The mitzvah?
and yeah, and they came from God directly to Moses.
Right, but those Levitical laws, they were I don't think ever really fully implemented, weren't they? And second, they still didn't be like, oh, God commands you to do this ritual to cure a person of this particular disease, did he?
Well, I mean, not that specific, but every now and then, let me look up the specific quotation, but it's like at the very beginning of many chapters, that kind of gives like, and then the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. I am the Lord your God. And then he goes on to list a whole bunch of these. And then it starts at, actually, maybe it's every single chapter, almost every chapter. But yeah, the one that I just flipped to was Leviticus 18.
Okay.
Yeah, so like if this is coming from God, then these would have to be the rules you'd have to follow. And the thing about I kind of forgot my thought.
I have
but
Leviticus
yeah,
18 as unlawful sexual relations.
Yeah. But that was just me flipping to one just to show you that, because that's the beginning.
Okay, so they are law. They are prescriptive then.
Yeah. Although these laws, the thing is, with the time that they were written, to the to the best that I could tell, from all the reading I've done, they're post-exilic, and they would have worked for the Second Temple period. So this is after they just got back from the exile, and they are looking to establish this new temple, and they need rules for this temple. And in fact, so, like especially for sacrifices and stuff like that, there's more or less a tax on these things. So you go in there, you have your specific sacrifice, and they do the sacrifice, they perform the thing for you, but then they also take some, and it helps keep the Levitical priesthood going, and yeah, just they do their thing. This is like it's become centralized. at this point.
Well, that makes sense. Sorry, I had some coffee go down the wrong pipe. That's not fun. I'm drinking my coffee. So, I know that makes a lot of sense to me. That it definitely would have been, prescribed by God to them, or they would have thought that it was prescribed by God to them at the very least. Yeah. So looking, forward, when people look back and they read the Bible, and especially when these religious organizations do so, how do they justify that? How do they say, look, these people just got it wrong, but it wasn't really God telling these things? And then how do you actually know when God is telling you something or not?
So there are multiple. Let's see. Now you wouldn't really be able to tell, theologically speaking, because from many works, many biblical works, the time
When
of
these
prophecy has ended. So you can't really have prophets.
there's no more
like,
prophets.
Yeah.
So that basically excludes the Mormon Church then.
Yeah,
They have
basically.
prophets.
But the whole thing is like I'm not sure if it's like because once you have this new heaven and new earth, like that's described in Revelation particularly, which I could go on and on about. I love Revelation. What a cool book. But when there's this new heaven and new earth, like I don't know if you would call that a time of prophecy again. I don't know if it would have the same definition because it would be markedly different.
There was. Revelations was prophetic, was it not? I mean, it was supposed to be in for end days. Although I think the current understanding of it, if correct me if I'm wrong, is dealing with Babylonian and Caesar, if I'm mistaken, or something along those lines.
Well, they had to draw a lot of. It was about Rome, but it was
Rome.
They used a lot. They used a lot of references to Babylon because Babylon was the destroyer of ancient Israel. So it while you could say that it presents itself as prophecy, I think it's abundantly clear that this is from a writer who looked at the world that he lived around and wanted to criticize it in some way, and he used these incredible imagery to describe it that way, but he still took up all the many ideas from the Old Testament.
Well, a lot of them love their imagery. I mean, look at Ezekiel. I mean, again, not a Bible person, but I mean, I've read a lot of it. But Ezekiel was very much into imagery as well. And again, looking backwards and saying, hey, the Bible got things right in science. I don't think any rational scientific person would make that leap by any stretch of imagination. I mean, when you write so much, you're bound to get a few things generally, in the ballpark correct. I mean, there's a lot of hit or miss, right? And it seems that they kind of cherry pick the ones that are just, oh, well, this was kind of close to what actually we know now,
right,
and ignore the ones that are completely wrong, like the whole birds are, bats are birds kind of thing, right?
Right. And one other thing here. Okay, so on the screen, you said earlier that you don't know if they'll use the arguments or not, but it's actually really interesting. For one of these, Job 26:7.
Job 26:7. Free float of earth and space.
Yeah, so I'm going to read from the passage, and I'm going to continue reading.
Okay, go for it. We'd like to listen to you read. All right, boys and girls, sit back, relax, have a drink, have a scotch, light a stogie if you wish, and Lawrence is going to read to us from the Bible, from Job 26:7.
I'm starting at 26:5.
Whatever.
The dead tremble, those who live beneath the waters. The underworld is naked in God's presence. The place of destruction is uncovered. God stretches the northern sky over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. He wraps the rain in his thick clouds, and the clouds don't burst with the weight. That's through 8 there. So while they can like you said, you don't know if they're going to use these arguments or not, but they can pick out a verse like, the earth hanging on nothing, right? But like all those verses around it, not exactly scientific. This is obviously
Yeah,
metaphor.
clearly not. And also, well, so, like Biologos, I read something on Biologos once that argued that something along these lines, like Job 26, would be God's way of explaining things in different cultures. Like, for example, the free floating of Earth and space, the Chinese would have interpreted it as such from God as it's on the back of a turtle, right? Because that's some of them believe that, right? The Earth was supported on the back of a turtle. Turtles upon turtles, turtles all the way down, upon elephants, kind of thing. These were mythos that were in many different cultures, and they would say there's a concordance, at least in that regard, maybe, that each culture had their own way of interpreting God's thing, and of course they're going to do it in the guise of their culture and in the imagery of their culture. But that doesn't have anything to do with science, because as you just read, none of that was scientific.
Yeah, yeah. It's very obviously poetic, and if someone decides to pick out a verse like that, just tell them to read the passage.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it, right? I mean, when things are poetic, you can't take something that is poetic and make it into a scientific prescriptive thing, right? You can't say, hey, because somebody wrote this and has some flowery imagery, right? That we can turn this into a science textbook, because I don't recall anybody saying, hey, I need to go to the hospital, please have your Bible to cure me. And again, I'm not into atheist bad arguments. You know that, right? I mean, I think bad arguments are bad arguments. But I don't think it's a bad argument to say that nobody has ever used the Bible as a science book to do anything scientific, especially in modernity. Especially if you go to a hospital, nobody is going to say, hey, I'm going to cure you, here's the Bible, and this is how we do it. It doesn't happen. It's not meant to, and I don't think that any rational theist is even going to make that type of argument, unless you're maybe a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know. but for the most part, it seems to be that even the most diehard people that say the Bible is infallible and inerrant will also say that you cannot get anything from the Bible that is in any way useful to really help anybody when it comes to anything scientific.
Yeah, I don't think it was. Yeah, it was never meant to be any kind of science text. These books were written for certain reasons, and for certain people, and none of them were science.
Yeah, and that would be an eisegesis approach, right?
Yeah,
From the time period, if you could do with hermeneutics.
I mean, close enough. It's a weird word to pronounce. Hermeneutics.
Hermeneutics. There you go.
I don't know.
Hermeneutics. Yeah. This is why I don't do Bible stuff. Let's see here. Okay, so, like for example, like this one. Each star is different. 1 Corinthians 15:41. Well, we obviously look at the stars and say this one's red, this one's yellow, this one's blue, this one's brighter than others. They know that it's different. What does it mean by science they were all the same? I don't. Where does science say they were all the same when we clearly could observe that they were not? I mean, they didn't even have to know what a star was, and of course they had no idea what a star actually really was. They couldn't have. Kawasa for 10,000 won says, I think you can persuade the ATA panel to agree that literalism is not the way to go. I agree with that. Then you can make a case that trying to find science in the Bible is a type of literalism. And I agree with you. And that's kind of the approach that I'm going to take. And I'm going to steal that word from you, because I think literalism is the perfect way to go about that. Is that, if you argue the Bible is inerrant and infallible, which I'm not quite sure that they do. And by the way, the difference between those two is very critical. One is that the Bible contains no errors, right? Inerrant means it has no errors; it's error-free. But infallible means it can't even have any errors. It's an even stronger claim, right? And I don't think the Reasons to Believe does that. I don't know. I would have to ask. So, but I agree with you. I don't think you can make a case that if you're reading the Bible, which most scholars, theists and atheists, would agree. Is very allegorical, very metaphorical, that it was ever meant to be even used as something that a scientist would use to discover something. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that the closest you get to history, because, well, actually, in the Bible, it is history. Uh, so the Deuteronomistic history. It's a pretty early work. It had uh, some additions. I'll put it that way. It went through a rigorous process of textual. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, let's just put it textual additions. Yeah, like they would have. There was like this first section of it, or like the first draft, almost, you could say. It's not exactly a draft, but they would have this first one, then they would have a second one when something else happened that added on to the first one, and then another one. Yeah,
Yep.
kind of like that.
Yeah, no,
So
and that from a bunch of different people with different things textually to add into it.
yeah, and the whole thing about the Deuteronomistic history is that it is a history book, but you have to look at how history used to be written back then. Like ancient histories contain plenty of references to the gods doing things.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't formalistic either. There's no form of formalism. Real quick, if I could squash something in the live chat by saying something, and maybe they'll all agree. Dr. Rana, who actually has a legit PhD, is a scientist. The reason being is because he might have false beliefs, but he's willing to put them to the test. That is the mind of a scientist. Young Earth creationists are not scientists because they're not willing to put their things to the test. They have actually said that anything that scientific goes against their belief, the science must be wrong. Reasons to Believe does not do that. Hugh Ross does not do that. Fuzz Rana does not do that. They want things to be tested. They might have a false belief. I believe that they do have a false belief. But they're willing to have the dialogues and go over. That's why we have ATA, Agree to Argue, as a non-believer talking to a believer, because he does want things questioned. Now, he is not a philosopher, and philosophy is not his forte or area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination, nor is it mine. But he at least is willing to have those types of discussions. That to me is a scientist. A scientist is somebody who says, look, I want to observe something and I want to get to the truth. I believe that this is the truth, but I'm willing to reevaluate those positions as new information is acquired and test these hypotheses. What else could possibly be other than the word scientist for that? So yes, Fuzz Rana is a scientist. Just because he has false beliefs does not negate that from him. Now, would I say that Dr. Humphreys is a scientist? No. Would I say that Dr. Tompkins is a scientist? No. Would I say that Dr. Snellings is a scientist? No. Why? Because they've all given up that right to call themselves a scientist when they have epistemically closed-minded beliefs that they cannot be wrong, that they are so infallible that the science must be wrong, and they will manipulate the science to contort to their beliefs, including Dr. Humphreys, who had made a math error of epic proportions, and to this day still has not corrected it to my knowledge yet. Now, he is aware of the math error. I don't know if he's going to correct it, but people have actually asked other young creationists in his circles, are you going to call him out on this? I mean, this is a math error. This is objective. This isn't a matter of, hey, is accelerated decay true or not, or this is the age of the earth. This is a math error. Whether you're a young creationist or you're a old creationist or you're a naturalist, whatever. Math is math. That's the beauty of math. It is objective as hell. And so when he does make a notable math error that you can go discover on your own, if you know math, you go look and say, oh, yes, dude, you made a math error here.
So sorry to cut you off there, Steve. I will be right back.
Promises. I'll be waiting for you with great anticipation. But in your absence, we do have somebody who dropped in. Hi, Chash.
Hello.
And how are you?
I'm here. Oh, good. I just got off of a really good stream with Karma and Claire over on Claire's channel. We were talking about like communication and like how to recognize when you're getting manipulated and how to sort of navigate an uncomfortable situation type thing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. I tuned in for a little bit actually when you talk about texting and stuff like that. Yeah, always good advice and stuff like that. And I'm glad that they get something out of it. I think people need to to get those kind of advice things every so often. So. Yeah, drop a link.
Yeah, so sometimes you just get in an uncomfortable situation and you just don't know. You just need an outside opinion of like, how did I handle this right? And sometimes you did. Sometimes the answer is yes.
Well, texting sucks. Let's put it this way: you lose so much in texting; it's ridiculous. I mean, a lot of it is lost. And you and I are very direct people. We don't send a whole bunch of paragraphs in IM, and so we're very quick. But we've learned, each other's like, I guess. flow.
Mannerisms.
Mannerism. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Literacy mannerisms.
Cadence.
Yeah.
We have a good understanding of each other's texting cadence.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it is because, again, when you're texting something, it's very brief. It's meant to be brief, right? But you lose a lot of the connotations there. And I've had that all my life. Everybody's had that all their life. But yeah, it helps to learn about a person when you're always in communication with them, because everybody's different too. Like I will tell you, I'm not going to say any names, but there are people I really do like, but I will avoid having long-term back and forth with them because they tend to take things what I say in the least charitable way sometimes and get offended, even though there's absolutely no offense taken. And it's just I don't want to have those kinds of discussions because it's just like, look, I'm not meaning it that way. I'm just very, very, brief in what I say. But
yeah, Milwaukee Atheist has a really cool clock in his background.
He does. Oh yeah, no, I know. He's got a cool little pad, man. He's got a little bachelor's pad, man. He's got like a Hugh Hefner type pad. Yeah.
I hope he watches this later and catches it.
I used to have a clock like that. It was a gun case.
Oh, I've never had a clock like that. In fact, I just don't like time in general.
Yeah. I think I had a clock on it. It was maybe I don't know if I had a clock. Right now I had to think about it. It was a gun case, but I don't remember. I think I had a clock on it. This was years and years ago. I remember the gun case, but I just wondering if it had a clock on it. I'm thinking it did.
So,
maybe it was a clock on top of it. I did have a clock, but it was a wooden clock on top of that matched the thing. That's what it was.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? Because I only caught a little bit.
Oh well, we're talking about since I'm doing a show on A Great Argue on the 10th, Bible and Science, Error 404, Science Not Found. A lot of people make the arguments that Bible is in adherence to what we know about science now, which I don't think actually is the case, and I'm not sure that RTB even argues such a thing. But I was tasked with kind of coming up with things to say, look, here the Bible got it wrong. Here the Bible got it wrong. How do we look about it?
Do not get me started on the Bible's description on how to deal with menstruation.
Yeah, well, that's one I think we're going to go to next. We had actually talked about Leviticus and the temple on how to cure diseases, which is incorrect, and then there's actually how to check if a woman was cheating by the temple dustings on the floor.
I mean, you
and then,
guys
of course,
had
menstruation.
Couple long conversations about slavery in the Bible, and it's like, why didn't God just tell people what soap was and how to make it? That would have been way more effective than most of the rules in Leviticus.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, I think okay, if I'm going to put on my theist hat, because I could do that as an agnostic, I could just pop that puppy right on.
Soap
is good. No, I like soap. Like I said, I like my soap a lot. But that came
don't
out
make
wrong.
It weird.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. That would you don't want to use too much soap; it chafes. It would dry out. So I, as a theist, if I would say, hey, look, people learned over a period of time, right? And so God didn't go. Here's all, here's everything, right? Here's all the science, right? They had to discover in their own.
There's a difference
time, right?
between needing to you do that with kids, right? So you could sometimes a kid needs to experience something before they'll listen, but that doesn't mean you don't tell the child first. So if you don't just let your kid put their hand on the stove, you say, hey, don't touch the stove, it's hot, and if they do it anyway, that's on them. But if you don't tell them in the first place, that's on you. Fuck you.
Yeah, but you're not going to tell a child, hey, here's some calculus before they even had math, right? You're going to have them learn little by little.
We're talking about soap. We're not talking about space travel. God didn't have to give us space travel, but he could have given us soap.
But I would make the argument, again, theist, they would make the argument that man had to discover these things on his own, right? Man learned to discover how to make soap. It was an actual discovery by lye and ashes, right?
God gave us language and people and sex and babies and shit. He gave us all animals and all the plants and stuff. Well, yeah, he had to make
I wonder if that was discovered. Do you think the sex was discovered or...
I'm pretty sure God kind of went out of his way to go have lots of sex.
I wish he would have consulted with me first. I would have had some suggestions with him on that, but whatever.
No, that's fair.
yeah.
But on the other hand, like God like intervenes and gives people things on the regular. Sometimes that's bad things, and sometimes it's good things. Like he gives people kids, or he gives people this, or he gives people that. And it's constantly it's like, oh, God blessed them with this thing. Why did he never bless anybody with soap?
Well, again, maybe he just figured they had to discover it in their own due time.
But it's soap.
Well, yeah, but okay. So what about this? My antimicrobial. By the way, the link is open. You guys can join if Karma Valley or you wants to come in. The link is in the video description.
It's just soap. There's a really big difference between very complex machinery and like there is something to be said for giving people too much information that they don't learn the negative effects of that stuff over time, so you learn it a little bit at a time, so you don't royally screw things up because you have a major amount. But we're not talking about
how has God done that here?
We're talking about soap.
In some cultures, they use urine in their soap, right?
Sure.
So urine and ash and lye and fats. So I mean, how would God, given to that information?
He's already got people cutting off foreskins. Use those to make soap.
So cut the tip of your penis off, and then here's the ingredients to make soap.
Yeah, you got the resources.
Why not have them early on learn how to make a nice Italian pizza too? That would have been nice. Or lasagna.
Well, that would depend on where you lived, right? Because we're talking about whether or not you had access to the resources already.
Yeah, no, and obviously, everybody in any kind of culture, they're going to have obviously the resources for soap, or at least some kind. But they did in Leviticus 13 tell people that they had to wash, right? And we don't know if they washed it with stuff, but they did know what ashes were, right? They used temple ashes.
God thought it was necessary to inform people that they needed to wash themselves, but didn't dictate on like, hey, here's a beneficial way to do it. Invent soap.
Well, maybe they had something similar. Like I said, I wonder if they washed their clothes in something at least. Because they might have discovered very early on, hey, when you add something to it, it does come out cleaner.
Well, now if it's something that was already available super duper early on, then why didn't he just say, yo, use soap?
Well, same reason why he didn't say, hey, don't have slaves. I don't know. But
at least right? I feel like soap is way less complicated and way less controversial of a topic. It's just soap.
Just soap. Cheshire's new mantra is just soap.
Wash your damn hands.
Wash your nasty ass.
You're not my supervisor.
You're not my supervisor.
Hey, I know we always go off on tangents, and that's completely fine. But did you ever watch the Friends episode? This was the funniest line I've ever heard in the entire show. Is when Chandler and Joey were talking.
Chandler and Joey.
Chandler and Joey.
I called it.
And Chandler's like, soap. It's self-cleaning. It's soap. And Joey says, yes, but think about the first thing you wash and the last thing I wash. That was the funniest line in the fucking entire series.
Sounds like a hidden way of saying never go ask them.
I only use hand soap since then in showers and and stuff like that. It's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Think about the first thing you wash and the last thing I wash.
Somebody's in the chat saying God said, "Hey, do you have slaves?" And then at me, they had soap. I'll be back in a second.
That's funny. Karma's turning 40. Yes, she hits the big 40. She is no longer going to be in her 30s. Technically, I think that's almost pushing over the hill. Is it not nowadays? I don't know. But Karma, you're looking great for 40, so you can't bitch. Don't complain. It only gets worse, anyways. By the way. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. And if you want to come in, Karma, by all means. Okay, so where we're at in the little chart here. What else we got to talk about here? Science. Winds blow in cyclones. That science then winds blew straight. And I don't think that necessarily is the case, right?
Well, I don't know what scientists thought back then
either. Yeah, I mean, what does Ecclesiastes 6:16 specifically say? And again, it's funny because it depends on what you read. What Bible you pick? I'm serious. They have so much diversity in their wording that to me, they connote completely different things, passage to passage. Completely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely. That's why I always think that you can't really read the Bible properly without some kind of commentary, or unless you have like a lot of background knowledge in the Hebrew or the Aramaic or the Greek, because you just lose so much through translation. No such thing as a perfect translation. Although Ecclesiastes is probably my favorite book of the Bible. It's the most nihilistic book of the Bible. It's fantastic. It's the
Well, I'm looking. Matter of fact, it's funny you said that because it's Ecclesiastes 1:6. Everything is meaningless.
Yes, it's great.
Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. That's pretty nihilistic.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the book is like how everything is just, it's basically all just dust in the wind. Like it doesn't matter. We're all gonna die anyways. It's just the best.
That is definitely nihilistic, to say the least. Anyways,
Yeah.
Rez, buddy, how are you feeling, man? How are you? How you been? Rez. You have to unmute yourself. Rez. All right, well, Rez will figure out how to unmute himself. So I don't see how that in any way is science.
And if you continue on, so the wind blows south and then turns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to the sea.
These are just observations, right?
They are observations, but the whole point of the text is that like it's really nothing is being accomplished here. Like everything that is happening,
it doesn't do anything. It's not going anywhere. It's just,
exactly.
I like the way you put that. There's nothing being accomplished here. Just, hey, look, sun comes up, sun goes down.
Yeah.
Tides go in, tides go out. You can't explain that. That's what it is. No, that's what it is, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes, that's the whole point.
But here's the thing: science does explain, right? That's the whole point of science. These correlations that would be, at best, tenuous to argue that they're in any way science. But even if you massively gave that conceding that it was somehow science, none of these things explain anything. All these are descriptive.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to point out here. So, like, if you were to take the interpretation that Ecclesiastes 1:6 is about, what does it say, cyclones in there? Yeah, then you would have to take the other interpretation as, you could argue it as whirlpools or something. Like, I think that those are both just wrong interpretations. But yeah, the whole point is, like, if in one verse it's drawing this kind of parallelism where this tide goes in and tide goes out. Those describing two things, and then also the wind blows south and it blows north, and then I don't think it says that it does blow in circles, but the whole point is that that it accomplishes nothing. It's back to the way it was.
Yeah, that is nihilistic. And again, these are all descriptive things that would probably imply there's no purpose, no goal, no teleos.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely gets into, pretty much God being the goal, and worshiping God is the goal, doing it properly.
Oh, I'm back.
Hi.
Hello.
How about this one? Ocean floors contain deep valleys and mountains. Science says ocean floor is flat. Now, this one's actually more interesting, and because you think about it, we didn't have deep sea diving stuff, right? And we didn't know there was vents, which a lot of them do claim that there's, one of the passages in the Bible says there's, the springs from the ocean, which I take mostly as, they probably thought there was some water spring that kept perpetually filling up the ocean or something along those lines, right? They didn't. To me, they didn't use spring to mean thermal hot spring.
Yeah, definitely not thermal hot spring.
Yeah, or the hydrothermic vent, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, that's a stretch at the very least. And again, looking from their perspective on eisegesis, this is, again, how they would probably have viewed things. I mean, would they not have said, hey, look, is probably a source of the ocean or lakes, because we see lakes go up and down. We see rivers go up and down. Where are they coming from?
Tide goes in, tide goes out. We don't know.
Yeah,
You can't explain that.
We don't always see things being filled, so maybe the water comes from springs underneath, kind of thing.
Right. Well, that's kind of where the whole thing from Genesis came from, where the
Fountains of the
the
deep.
windows of heaven opened up.
Well, the windows of heaven, when has that been in the sky?
Well, yeah, but that's that's kind of getting at the same thing that you're getting at.
Oh.
Just not from the bottom or from the top.
Oh, okay. As above as below, right?
I mean, close enough. I don't
Something
know
like
the quotation exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, for I don't know what translation they were using or if they translated it themselves, but for, let's see, what is that? 2 Samuel 22:16, if I'm seeing that properly.
Yeah, 2 Samuel 22:16, yes.
All right, then at the command of the Lord, at the blast of his breath, the bottom of the sea could be seen, and the foundations of the earth were laid bare.
Well, they definitely probably thought the earth had a floor of some kind. They didn't think it probably was an infinite
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, they had a foundation for the earth. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They knew the earth wasn't flat.
I think it's fine to have new interpretations of Bible passages that the people who wrote them may not have intended. I mean, is the Bible not supposed to be a relatively malleable book, depending on like who reads it according to the doctrine? If I'm not mistaken.
I would think it's just the opposite.
I would think that the authors at the time, for each author it'd be different, obviously.
Yeah.
But for them, they were trying to get a certain point across.
Yeah, but the doctrine in the church is that like you read the Bible, the Holy Spirit speaks through you, and different people will get different messages from different passages, and that will be whatever message the Holy Spirit wants you to have at that time from that passage, right?
Oh, you mean like an inspire thing from the because they say when you read the Bible, you're supposed to read it in the way the Holy Ghost tells you. By the way,
through the
right?
fruit of the Spirit or something.
Yeah.
But like, is it not? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the doctrine in that case, because if that's the doctrine and the whole thing, the idea is that it's inspired by God, then I see no failure in the argumentation that, well, the people at the time may not have intended to write it this way, but it was the Spirit speaking through them and to us in the future when we would understand it.
And
why don't we have soap?
And by the way, As Above, So Below by Yngwie Malmsteen, Rising Force. Love that, Smitty. Rising Force, if you guys ever want my recommendations for one of the all-time greatest albums of history that you've never fucking listened to in your entire life besides Smitty, go find Rising Force. That was the name of the group and the name of the band. Yngwie Malmsteen was the guitarist. And by the way, Kawasa, don't scare me. Yngwie is not dead. Yngwie actually has a tour in Las Vegas coming up. Don't tell me that he's dead, because I will be. We already lost Dio, and Ozzy can go anytime. He's just not aware of it. So, no, Malmsteen's not dead. He has a tour booked for Vegas coming up. Yeah. But Yngwie Malmsteen is the greatest arpeggio guitarist of all time. Now, people argue, well, arpeggios aren't extremely hard for guitarists. Well, but look at the way he plays it. I mean, he's a maestro. I mean, he's one of the greatest musicians I've ever heard in my entire life. So, do me a favor, guys. Go listen to the entire album of Rising Force, and then don't tell me if that's not one of the most brilliant albums of all time. And if you do tell me, you're going to get blocked if you don't think so. It's just the way it is. Anyways, back on topic. Have you, Lawrence? Have you listened to Rising Force?
No, I mean, I've listened to a lot of. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Yngwie Malmsteen. That's how I always. Yngwie. Okay. Well, I've listened to a lot of his, crazy guitar stuff, which is just awesome.
He's brilliant. Yeah, Marching Out was their second album, if I'm not mistaken, and then, but they had a couple of different singers for him. I think one of them was, if I'm not mistaken, Jolene Turner. I may have sang for him, or Glenn Hughes. But yeah, just absolutely amazing. One of my all-time favorite bands. All right,
can I just point something out?
Yes, Rez, how are you?
I'm okay. Good. Aside from the fact that you just said, okay, back on topic, and immediately started talking about the tangent again.
Have you listened to one of my streams before?
Oh, okay, fair.
Go ahead.
No, I wanted to go back to Chesh's point. Is the problem that you're having, Chesh, is that there are multiple denominations of the doctrine surrounding multiple versions of the Bible. Thus, every single individual on the planet is going to have an individual interpretation of the Bible, even to the point of what they constitute as literally. And
Isn't
people
that
are
why you
going to
get the
pick and
no?
choose.
Yeah, isn't that why you get the no true Scotsman fallacy? That it's like the thing that's supposed to keep it consistent is like the Holy Spirit or God Himself, and so if you don't have a way of judging whether or not the Holy Spirit is being active in one case versus another, and the only distinction you have is whether you agree with it or not, is not exactly the most consistent thing on the planet.
Well, I mean, obviously,
No,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it also.
But
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
It also doesn't help that every single individual in their own minds is going to have a different idea as to what the Holy Spirit or God or Jesus is.
Well, and they're also okay. I think most people would all agree that man is infallible in every aspect of the way you can conceive that word. And so anything that the Holy Ghost would tell us would have to be filtered through the system of infallibility for our processing system. Matter of fact, not to have any kind of Schadenfreude or anything like that, or not to put salt in the wound. But like just recently, saith Bernicate had withdrawn from the ministry because citing that he has done something that he believes is beyond forgiveness, I guess, or sinful, to not be allowed to preach or be part of the ministry or anything like that. Now I don't know what he did, and I don't really care. But he says he has put his whatever into the Presbyterian elders, and I had messaged him publicly, but I had said, but aren't you doing, if you're fallible, why do you not think that the elders are infallible? I'm fine if you want to believe that, you have your jury with God and Christ and all that, but why give it to man? If you've discovered that you are infallible like the rest of humans, why then think that the people you're entrusting to determine, to judge you are no less fallible than you are?
Isn't that come with sort of the idea that somebody's been ordained by God, and so they are able to speak on behalf of God?
He was ordained by God, and yet
case?
he was fallible.
No.
Yeah, the problem is you can't have an infallible system, even through the Holy Spirit or whatever, that's meant to be like divine inspiration from God Himself, because the ultimate fallible system is the end filter, that being humanity, and every single individual is going to interpret that word differently,
Right.
even if it's only slightly.
Language is messy.
Yeah, exactly. But like, we are fallible beings, thus there cannot be an infallible system. Thus, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and that actually kind of touches on Gnosticism back in the 2nd century, where they actually recognized that, I think, and they said, "Hey, look, the only way we can actually become knowledgeable of God, to become enlightened, to become spiritual with the divine, is to basically become one with the divine. So there is no filter there. It's to understand the divine hiddenness the divine hidden knowledge that exists, to obtain some kind of spiritual connection to God directly, right? So I think they would have probably thought the exact same thing. But again, I don't know how the Reasons to Believe model interprets this stuff. They are kind of in a class by themselves, because they want to promote all the science, and I have their books. They've given me all their books. I get them all for free. I can get any book I want from RTB at any time. And the ones I have read, they do try to get into the science. Like I've read Improbable Planet by Hugh Ross, and I've talked to cosmologists, and I don't see any scientific issues with it. Now, what he concludes, of course, is problematic. But they do want to make sure the science gets correct. But of course, they do in some books will throw in, well, this is what the science says. However, we believe that man was specially created, that Adam was a special creation by God, which kind of throws a wrench in the whole evolutionary thing for biology. Because it's weird when you accept it up to one point, but you say, okay, at this point, though, this is when God says, hey, I'm going to intervene here, right? But they do believe that.
My thoughts on this kind of differing interpretations. thing. If the scripture itself is God inspired, then it's not that you, the reader now, would have your interpretation be God inspired. The text itself is. And you can have like the the whole Holy Spirit, that kind of moving experience, right, where it moves you in a certain way. But I think that the best way to understand this book is to look at it in its historical context, because it's so old, spanning so many centuries, that it's not, because it wasn't written for us. It was written for people back then. Why would these people write a book that was written
Well,
for?
but
Wasn't it
they
also,
would probably
wasn't it
disagree
also
with that.
passed? It was also passed down verbally initially, wasn't it, before it was actually written down?
Well, it depends on what part it is. So like potentially, some of the laws, go back to, maybe the 8th century, and they could have been passed down verbally, although they share a lot of parallels with Asardon's treaties. So it's I think that they saw a system that parts of a system that they liked, and then implemented some of those. But also I think the Song of Moses, for example, we call it the Song of Moses now. I don't think it was that beforehand, but there's a good textual witness to at least the base of that song. So while there is stuff that does go back quite a while, it's certainly not everything, or not even the majority.
Yeah, but okay, that I would agree with that. But wouldn't like RTB say that, look, the Bible being inspired from God would have applied back then just as much as it should apply today? I mean, should it be that we can look at the Bible and say, look, there are some scientific misstatements in there, things that we know that are not scientifically correct? Does that make the Bible no longer inerrant? Does it make it no longer infallible? Or is it, hey, these are just man's statements that they're making based upon their observations, rather than them saying God says there's only 10,000 stars in the universe, and we know that's not correct?
I don't see that being a problem, as long as they don't view it as a science book. If they view it as a book of science, then it's a problem.
Yeah, and I know they don't. They have they do think the book of science. I'm not going to say it supersedes the book of Bible, book of Revelation, but they do say that for us to understand reality, you would use science, right? For us to apprehend things and make predictions and explanatory models, the Bible wouldn't be used for that. The Bible to them is a spiritual book, right? It's a guide to salvation. It's a guide to becoming knowledgeable about God. It's not meant to be a guide to teach you how to do brain surgery or to cure disease or something.
Depends on the Christian you're talking to.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about RTB. Yeah, of course. No, I'm telling you, got some people out there like Jehovah's Witness and Young Creationists that probably would say, hey, look, we are going to do what the Bible commands us to do as far as curing stuff. But by the way, fun fact, it never works. It has never worked, and it will never work when they apply those types of things. And guess what happens to those people? They die. It's just, we know this to be the case.
Imagine how many people would have lived if God started us off with the buff that would be considered soap.
Cheshire's new campaign.
I'm not letting this go.
It's going to be for soap now. Cheshire, you know what?
Only soap.
There you go. Why did you make it into the soap making business? That's profitable.
To be fair,
goblin
all
soap.
of this. Forget all of this absolute nonsense about morally egregious acts that may or may not be acceptable, about whether or not God is moral or immoral, about killing babies and mind controlling people's souls, whatever. F that nonsense. Why the hell don't we have soap?
Soap is greater than salvation.
Right from the start.
There you go.
We should have had soap.
There you go. There's our shirt.
He should have created Adam and soap. And then Eve.
Just here's two great ideas for you. So we have to have a shirt now. Soap greater than salvation.
Yes.
Okay, so use your artsy crafty, your artsy fartsy stuff. Soap, and then the greater sign, greater than salvation. And two, this is completely for you. You could take this and run with it yourself. go ahead and make goblin soap with your own urine, because if it worked for Delphina for selling her bathwater, you can make a killing by making soap out of your own piss. Just do it. Just don't even think about it.
I would be mildly concerned about not that I would like say it's a bad thing or you shouldn't do this, but if I made goblin soap, I would be concerned about how many goblin heads would end up breaking off in people's buttholes, and I don't want to be responsible for that.
Well, you can make it a hand. You don't have to make it a bar soap. You can make it a hand soap.
No.
Has to be bar soap.
What nonsense are you talking about?
Yeah,
Here's
I
the
guess
thing,
so.
though.
Bar soap is the way to go for that.
That would
Isn't
just make it
Pandora's
easier to show up
box?
there.
It's true.
Isn't Pandora's box part of the Christian theology?
You
Or am I
don't
wrong?
need clean laws if you have soap. God damn it.
Well, soap isn't going to cure everything. Soap doesn't get rid of it's not a magic thing where you could get rid of all disease, viruses, and stuff like that.
Well, no, God could have just done that on his own. He didn't need to make those things.
Well, now you're just
but we're
being
ignoring that
technical.
part.
Well,
Yes, God could
that's
have done
why
a lot
I
of
asked
things,
about-
I guess.
That's why I asked about Pandora's box. Is that part of the Christian theos? I can't remember.
Well,
I don't think so, no.
By the way,
It's not-
Smitty's already down for 10 bars if you make it. Goblin soap with your piss.
I wouldn't say it's Pandora's box. I mean, you could argue that there's like some, that there is a parallel between Pandora's box and like the fall or something, but like that's just like a generic origin of evil type of thing.
Okay, maybe I was just
How
making that
to
connection on
make
my own.
Soap out of piss. Thanks, Google.
I thought there was some kind of event, like down the road after he created man initially, like a Pandora's box event where like disease suddenly became a thing, or maybe I'm just making that up.
Well, I mean, if you're thinking about like the fall where they sinned and then death was brought into the world, like is that
Possibly,
what,
yeah.
yeah,
Is
like
it,
that's
like, because
that's
soap
just
wouldn't
a
have
generic-
been needed until then. So I was sort of playing devil's. I was playing devil's advocate for the Bible. How ironic.
Actually that reminds me, Steve,
Lawrence.
you left like an in jest kind of comment about me being a secret Christian, obviously a joke, but I have actually been called a secret Christian or a crypto Christian.
Oh, of course.
I have been
That's good.
called that before.
Crypto Christian.
a crypto Christian,
I've
like
never
a
heard of that,
cryptid.
but I like it. I do like it.
They
What is a
Like,
crypto Christian?
they think that I am like infiltrating the atheist community, like I'm just pretending to be an atheist.
Dude, I had just
Oh.
yesterday, a matter of fact. Okay, so I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. One group I'm in where I know the owner who does agree with me, he just made it so I didn't have to get my post pre-approved because he didn't want people hassling me. One of the other mods took it upon themselves to say I was a troll and kick me out of the group and block me from the group. Now he's been unavailable, and it's not a big deal because I'm in 40 other groups, and look, they're a dime a dozen. So, and it has a lot of the same people, so it doesn't really matter.
We were
But-
talking today on Claire's channel about communication and stuff, and so that's definitely a mod not communicating with the owner. and the
Yeah,
owner
well, it's
not
funny because, like I
communicating
said,
with the
the mod, he owns the group. There's more than one admin, but he's the original founder of the group. And he's
Yeah.
been telling me, Steve, I like your posts because you explain to these people things that I've been trying to explain to them for ages. He hates lacktheism. He's like, look, I'm a atheist. Gods don't exist. Let me tell you why. Theism is bad. Let me tell you why. Right? I mean, that's his approach. So he hates this wishy-washy. I just don't believe you crap. But I went to another group, right? Because I just pick a group and I throw out there to see what I get. And one of the theist mods I had a really nice conversation with, right? Really cool. And then one of the other mods muted me. And I was like, and people were asking her, what did he do? What was the problem here? Now I reached out to her and I said, yeah, what did I do? Now we ended up talking for a long while, but he thought that I was a theist. They're like, oh, well, Steve's just a closet theist. He goes in these atheist groups to try to get people to watch his videos and promote Jesus and whatever nonsense. And I'm like, okay, none of that is the case. Now, I did tell him who I was, and I gave him all the details, and he knew a lot of the same people, and he was agreeing with me on a lot of stuff, and he unmuted me. But I was just like, this is what happens. It's like you don't have this tribalistic thing where you say, hey, look, all atheists are all of a sudden geniuses. Oh, great. You don't believe in a God, and you're all of a sudden like great at these discussions. No. it doesn't work that way. And I can assure you that Lawrence is no theist by any stretch of imagination. He is a proper atheist. He thinks gods are all bullshit. And he's not afraid to say it, I don't think, are you?
We've been over this before.
Actually, you're agnostic in that regard.
Yeah. Although
Yeah,
I think
true.
the title atheist is just more useful, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that maybe people are getting
agnostic.
confused and theists are getting worried because there's too many lack theists going around muddying the waters.
Right? Yeah, because it isn't Lawrence that thinks that way. It's Cheshire is the one that thinks that way. My bad. Cheshire is the proper atheist.
As a harder atheist in this group and an anti-theist, I would like to posit the idea that Steve's position on agnosticism is probably the most honest out of everybody here. Like the way he's explained his agnosticism, I believe is the most intellectually honest way to approach this subject, and still, it is still an ally to the atheist community.
Yeah, because I don't
so,
advocate for agnosticism, right? It's not the people that are in the atheist community. They seem to want to advocate for atheism, right? That's why they have atheist activists. I'm not an agnostic activist. I don't care if people are agnostic, atheist, or theist. Cheshire and I have always said all we give a shit about is they have some kind of coherency in their system, right? And be able to rationally explain it. If somebody says they're a theist and they can rationally explain it, I don't care. If they can say they're an anti-theist and they can rationally explain why, I don't care. I think that all the positions could be justified. I understand the need for anti-theism, a matter of fact. I get it. I really do.
I don't know. I might have a mission now, and I'm just upset about this soap thing. That I'm just
Soapism.
like, I'm not letting it go. I'm not. I gotta say, because of the conversation we were having earlier, how we're kind of talking about, like, being passive aggressive isn't really the best way to communicate with anyone.
So the Church of Soapism.
It doesn't mean you should, though.
Is that like a?
Listen,
Jurassic Park. Just because you can doesn't mean
not.
you should.
I'm not advocating whether or not you should or should not. That is entirely up to the individual. I'm not your mom. I'm not your boss. I'm not your supervisor. I don't know if that's appropriate thing to do in your life. But I am advocating for, why the hell didn't God start us off with soap?
Real quick, I want to get back to that in a second. But Rez, thank you.
He
for those
started
kind
us
words,
off with dirt.
But I wanted to thank Rez for those kind words. And like I said, I the difference is, like I said, I'm not trying to advocate for any particular position. I'm not trying to change anybody's minds as far as what their theological stance is. What I want to do is educate them on the topic. And there are certain normative things in philosophy. And Rez recognizes this, Chess recognizes it, Lawrence recognizes it, my audience recognizes it. But when I go into a group and I explain to them, look, in philosophy, like disbelief means to affirm the negation. To believe the negation, they go, oh, you're just an idiot. I'm like, oh, wait a minute here. Go to American Atheist. It literally says, American Atheist says, atheism is not the disbelief in God. They're using it the same way I am, because that's how it's correctly used. They actually got that right. So, anyways, but I appreciate that, Rez. Back to your soap thing. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no good.
I just wanted to follow up on that. Like, the reason I say that is because the reason why I'm a atheist and an anti-theist is because I'm so colored by my past experiences with religion and all the negative experiences I've had with it.
Which is justifiable,
that I'm not
isn't
going
it?
to go into detail with.
Of course that's justifiable.
I feel justified
Yes.
in saying gods do not exist, period. However, if I were to take a step back and look at it in a more intellectually honest way, I would probably go down your agnostic route. But
And you can still be an anti-theist, by the way.
I'm willing to take the plunge and potentially, on a very small, infinitesimally small chance that I'm wrong, and just say gods do not exist.
Which is perfectly fine. When you have a belief, you can be wrong. You can say, look, I believe there's no God. If I'm wrong, God shows up. You know what I do? I change my belief. Yippee fucking do. But people are so scared on the internet to being wrong. And it's not because of people like us. It's because of the people that have these massive egos that are looked up to as atheist activists that, oh my God, if they got something wrong, they can't have this, right? They're so afraid to be wrong, so they don't make any positive claims. And they can avoid them at all possible. I make positive claims all the time. And guess what? If I make one that's wrong in one of my arguments, I fix it. Somebody had pointed out, hey, Steve, you made a mistake in your phrasing here. You know what I did? I fixed it. That's how you make better arguments.
That's one of the things I love about you and Chesh and other people in this community is when we discover that we're wrong about something, we will just straight up correct it and say, we were wrong.
How else how else are you supposed to go about getting a better argument if you don't correct it? Why would you continue to have an argument that's flawed, that has an error in it, whether it's some kind of conceptual error, logical error, typo, whatever? Why would you continue to have that argument? That's what we see from people in the internet a lot, that no matter how much they've shown they are wrong, they will die on that hill regardless of the evidence against them. Even if it's objective mathematical evidence, they will still die on that hill. That, to me, is the antithesis of critical thinking.
I'm going to go ahead and refuse to buy a mold for the soap, because if it's goblin soap, it should be in like little chunks and like broken ass pieces that you're just like, you get a weighted amount, not necessarily just a bar, because there's no guarantee that it will actually be a proper shape because a goblin made it.
So I was going to ask you guys,
and it's probably got all kinds of jagged tooth marks in it.
It's going to smell like mushrooms.
What is your favorite?
They double it as their toothpaste as well.
I was going to ask, what is your favorite soap? And can you guys? And by the way, I haven't bought a bar of this in a particular time because I have so much soap. I don't need to go buy any recently. But there's one particular soap that I is my favorite that I am out of. But what do you? And you, this is probably going to lose me every sub that I have. So fuck you. But what do you think my favorite soap is?
Coffee soap.
No,
Dove hand soap.
No. I mean, what brand?
Dove.
I do like Dove, but that's not my favorite.
Is it Ivory?
Is it Dove?
No, it's not Dove, but I do like Dove, but not Ivory. Nope. Come on,
Dove?
if somebody, you guys see how well you know me.
Is it a jackal?
Sandpaper?
Sandpaper is not soap.
Steve doesn't use soap. Confirm.
Nope. Actually, I should say that I have two actually favorite. Well, one's my all-time favorite, but there's two soaps that I really do prefer. Irish Spring. Thank you, Jamie Russell. The Young Earth Creation gets it right. Yes, I really do like Irish Spring. Now, there's a second.
I was thinking like the green package, but I couldn't remember the name of it.
Irish Spring is my favorite. However, there's another soap that I use, but not for really body wash per se. But if you ever get Lava soap, Lava soap is the bomb.
I only would have hated you not if you said Irish Springs. I would have been like, if you'd said Axe, I would have been like, ew.
I don't have any Axe soap. I do have a knockoff Axe body spray, but I use it very sparingly.
I have entirely derailed this conversation because I completely undid all of the rules the Bible added in by ruining it with like, soap. Why didn't he just give us soap though?
That's what I'm going to do when I go on the show on ATM. I'm just going to go,
yes!
Soap.
Soap. The answer is soap.
Yes, soap. Head and Shoulders is not soap either. It's shampoo. Unless they make a soap, I don't know. But and try Lava. If you got WD-40, I'm not that old, George. Jesus.
Do.
Damn. But if you guys, do you get Lava soap up there in Canada?
I don't even know what that is.
Lava has actual pumice in it, like lava pumice. It is very abrasive, but it's
I
great
also don't
shit
know what
for
that
cleaning.
is.
A pumice is lava. It's basalt.
Thanks.
It's like that rock with a bunch of holes in it.
Yeah, like obsidian. Almost.
Oh.
Yeah.
So when you said it was lava, you legitimately meant it.
It's
kind of like
lava.
Scoria.
Yeah. She's from Canada. They don't have volcanoes up there, I guess. But it has this really good pumice in it, like almost like sandpaper. And when you've got grime, that lava is amazing. But yeah,
the joke's on you. I've never used soap. I'm a goblin.
She don't watch that nasty ass.
I use my tongue like a dog.
Nice.
All right. So, anyways, I think I have run the course. Anyways, we're at 90 minutes. I think I got some ideas.
Why do you invite me to these things?
Oh, I love going on tangents. It doesn't bother me. You know that. I mean, unless there's something specific, then I want to stay on topic. But this isn't one of those things. So, but what's your favorite soaps? I didn't ask you guys.
The
Kraken. Kraken.
I have to go look. I have one that I like to use. It's an Olay one. It's it's like super moisturizing Olay bar. But I also like just Old Spice. Old Spice has some great scents.
I use Old Spice deodorant. Yeah. My dad used to get the cologne and the original Old Spice cologne things, and I definitely know that scent very well. But Old Spice makes good products.
I don't know what kind of soap it's called. I think the brand is Dove, I honestly don't pay much attention to brands, to be honest, unless it's like
Gotta be Dove.
Coke. But like it's like a coarse soap, so it's like it doubles like as a soap and a loofah. So
That's
Oh,
lava.
it's like
Yeah, lava
it's
does
got
that.
like it's got the
I
little,
forget what they're called.
little
There's like a specific name. Exfoliating
kind.
soaps, like
Yeah.
because I don't think the smooth soaps like do much, to be honest. I think the coarser ones are better.
Yeah, I know.
I
Like I
did
said,
used to have a soap that was like a workplace soap, so it was like for like industrial work, and it just straight up just had grit sand in it. It was just like, this
Yeah,
is
it's
just
I like the harsher soaps though.
sand.
Yeah, I mean, I do use
That
them
just-
for, you work on a car or something like that, you work in the garden or something like that. Those are much better, to say the least. But all right, so anything else you guys want to like give me suggestions to look up for this upcoming thing on the Bible?
Soap.
I mean, if you do, just leave them in the comments. Well, I think I
If
got
every,
I'd like-
every single point that gets brought up, if it can be, if it would not be a problem if it wasn't, if the soap was a thing, stay on target and stick with soap.
Yeah, probably cover
I'd
a
like
little
to
more than
propose
that.
an idea that you can continually refer to it as the babble, because that's all it is.
I would also recommend that if the answer is like, oh no, a bear is attacking us, the answer can still be soap.
Well, that
Just
wasn't a
saying.
science claim, right? The whole, what is it, Jedediah? No, was that his name? In the Prophet Jedediah, Lawrence? With the two bears?
Oh no, Elisha.
Elijah, Prophet Elijah. With the
No,
with the-
Elisha.
Whatever. It's Bible stuff.
Those are two different people.
Elisha. How do you pronounce his name? Elisha.
There's Elisha and Elijah. Elijah was the first guy, and he pretty much mentored Elisha.
Yeah. Lord
That's
Brian
good.
asked.
Not only are they have very incredibly similar names, but also they're like side by side in the timeline.
Yes.
Thanks. That's definitely not confusing.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Lord,
God.
Lord Brian says, "Yo, Steve, if you became a theist, what kind of theist would you be? Agnostic theist, agnostic deist, classical theist? Probably just a classical theist. Yeah. Jamie says, check out something with Sky. I don't watch anything with Skylar, so forget that. But yeah, no, I think we've got. I think I've got enough to go by here.
I'm
just-
I'm just saying.
Wait, hold on. No, hold on. Okay, so you can bring this up. It's one of my
Whoa.
favorites. I actually totally forgot about it until just now. So I forget the exact verse, but it's the Witch of Endor narrative. So basically, it's they go see this witch, and witches have been outlawed, and so she has to like hide away and stuff, and then they summon effectively it's the ghost of Samuel, and see that my favorite part about that verse is the fact that the word used to describe Samuel is Elohim, which means God or gods. So that's my favorite part about that verse. But if you want to throw that into a science thing, pretty much a ghost summoning, if you want to call it that.
Well, the thing with that is that back then they didn't really have methodological naturalism, did they? So for them to do it,
No.
for them to want to summon a ghost, even some kind of scientific thing, okay. In fact,
Sure,
even
but
today,
I'm
people
like-
could even though science can't address those types of claims, they can still test things. As far as like if you have a bleeding eyes of a statue in a church, they can go and say, "Oh, look, yeah, this is caused by rust and piss water or something," right? And if they want to do experiments, say, "Hey, look, let's see if we can conjure something." I got no problem with that, right? They may not be able to explain it, but if they want to test to say, "Okay, let's see why a Ouija board if it works or not. Let's see if we can conjure something," that's science. That's nothing wrong with that. That's not something science is precluded from doing. Science is precluded from ever determining that it actually is a ghost, right, or a dead person. You can say, "Hey, look, we do this. There's some kind of effect. We have things moving. We don't understand why." But at the very best, they can just leave it unexplained until they do, right?
Right. I didn't know if you wanted to use that one or not.
I just don't know if it would be qualified.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Now, there are two other things. Chester had brought up one about the the menstrual cycle stuff. If there's anything in science relating to that, let me know, and leave it in the video description. And then also, I was going to probably touch on the whole testing of a woman's pregnancy if they've been unfaithful, infidelity, by taking the ashes or stuff like the dust on the temple floor and making it into a concoction they have to drink, right?
Maybe. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
you mean the abortion portion?
Yeah, something like if she was unfaithful, they would cause her to have an abortion and then determine her guilt.
Yeah, and if she didn't have an abortion, she wasn't guilty.
Yeah, it basically a no-win situation kind of thing, right?
That's if you're a witch and if we're gonna dump you in the water, and if you survive, you're a witch, and we're gonna kill you, and if you don't survive, you weren't a witch. Cool,
Oops.
thanks.
Oops.
Too bad they didn't do that for the quote-unquote Virgin Mary. Could have saved us a lot of hassle.
You got to remember, they weren't the most critical thinkers back then, in a lot of ways. But that, again, I don't think that was like the upper echelon of society. These people that probably held these types of beliefs were, hey, if I judge a witch and she survives, she's a witch, and she doesn't, she wasn't. I don't think it was any scientist that was probably putting forth those types of experiments like that. But this is one of the reasons why we do promote critical thinking, because even though that sounds bizarre, I have seen people with pretty much just as bad of reasoning out there.
It's funny how all the judgments, particularly toward like women for doing potentially bad, like quote unquote bad things in their society, were a catch-22. Like, if you were
because
guilty,
women are always
you were
wrong.
fucked.
So
And
that's why.
and if you were innocent, you were fucked anyways. So
yeah, I mean, we all know the
God.
woman's always the one to blame, right? I mean, that's just how it is. That's a metaphysical fact, isn't it, Chess? You accept that, right?
How is a rib supposed to know any better?
Yeah, I mean, they get one of our ribs and they bitch at us ever since. What can you do, man?
Listen, this is all your guys' faults anyway. We're just a proxy of dumb things that you guys want.
You do realize I can take back the rib at any time, right? I mean, consider it a loaner. I remember growing up, there were actually people that I ran into were like, oh yeah, but science is proven because men do have one less rib. I'm like, no, they don't. What the hell are you talking about?
Yo, they used to tell us that nonsense in church.
which nonsense? Sorry.
That men actually do have one less rib.
Yeah, but don't you think that's one of those things that anybody can go out and go, okay, I opened a book on anatomy and realized that was wrong. And yes, Anastasia, I'm cheating by getting help prior
outside
to the
help?
show. Yeah, I'm getting outside help. Well, I was hoping somebody could join us, right? I prefer like an atheist person who has some kind of credentials that knows the Bible. I wasn't able to get one. I mean, Leo would be good, I guess, but Leo, I don't know if he'd be good for this particular episode. But I'm trying to find somebody of kind of a noteworthy.
Screw you, Milwaukee atheist. You don't know shit.
No, he is an actual expert on these things, and actually, he would be really good for these things. Actually, I mean, I consider he actually is schooled in this particular. This is his jam.
I'm not going to say I'm an expert. I'm not going to say I'm an expert because I'm still, getting a degree and all that.
Now that I have Anastasia here, maybe if you're not busy on the 10th, we can run it by. Because you're one of the most brilliant people I know on the Bible, and this would be right up your alley. It's at 3:00 Pacific time on the 10th. So maybe we can run it by Anastasia.
I want to see the look on Fuzzrana's face if you start trying to have the conversation about about menstrual cycles and the science of that nonsense, because that would probably be really funny. I think he would get pretty uncomfortable.
He does get flustered on these types of things.
But
yes.
I would like to watch.
Yes. and we're allowed to bring any of that stuff up. Yeah. Anastasia says, "Can I just say I love Chesh?"
Oh, thanks.
And,
And
by the way, somebody says Herman Mays. Somebody had recommended Mays before too, but Mays is a biologist. But Mays doesn't get along with me because he has been slanted against me by other forces and misunderstood a lot of things I was saying because he just didn't want to understand, because he is very far under the SJW camp, and I am not politically correct. And so,
who was that? Sorry,
Dr. Herman Mays.
The answer is that nobody likes Steve.
I know. But like I said, I'm not an SJW. But Herman Mays is a great guy and brilliant what he does. But he does run the same line of reasoning as like PZ Myers, and so.
Oh, I heard that guy sucks.
PZ is I used to get along with PZ really well too, but he is so far fringed that if you do not agree with their SJW stuff, you are a piece of shit.
Yep.
So what are you gonna do?
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anastasia was asking about what she missed. Soap. The answer is soap.
Soap is greater than salvation, is what we determined. So
yes.
Why didn't God explain soap to people?
Yeah. Or just start us off with soap. It'd be a nice buff.
How do you have disease with soap?
The TLDR is very soap, much wow.
Yes.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
So Lawrence, if I can, I'll talk to her after. But if I would think you'd make a great guest for the show. I mean, you're well qualified, you're articulate, you're not an asshole much.
And the biology being a little bit wrong is also a thing in the Bible, in the Bible,
in the biblioteca, in the library. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot I could probably go into, but I do want some help on this because I am not confident when talking about the Bible, especially with somebody who is, and Fuzz is definitely well versed in the Bible.
Just do like a general Google search of scientific facts in the Bible and see what comes up.
Yeah, I've done that.
We'll let you see what like the creationists or the young earth creationists or the theists are saying, and you pick out a couple of those and you'd be like, okay, well, how accurate is this and why?
Yeah, no, I've kind of done that a little bit. Now, and again, you got to remember, these are not debates, right? I'm not debating Fuzz. They're just discussions on a particular topic. But, I've been kind of tasked to take them to task and say, look, the Bible is not a clear science book, which, again, they will agree on that. But say, look, if we can't,
I'll die on this hill.
If we can't, have the Bible get these things right, then what the hell was God telling people? And was God telling people misinformation? Was it actually not from God, and then they're just getting it wrong, saying that it was from God? But that kind of throws into question anything that people had been in the Bible saying that is from God. Does it not? I would think so. Opinions?
I think it depends on the person's view of biblical and textual history, because you can look at a book like Genesis, let's say, and you could be like, oh, well, the author of that he was just wrong. But then you could look at a different book written by a different person, and you could theoretically go, well, this guy was onto it. That's just a possibility. Yeah. I don't think very many people take that approach at all, but that's a possibility.
Yeah. And no, by the way, I still have a lot of anti-apologist science people at my disposal, to say the least. But again, when you deal with a lot of people and you're expected to kind of just capitulate to them because of things that you don't agree with, it's not going to happen. And there's just some people that just like that. And I don't know why, but I'm not going to please everybody. That's just the way it is.
Do we still have Chris around? Or
Bible history skeptic?
Yeah, I think so.
No, he went full dark side.
She
went full dark side. That's right, she did transition. But I thought, did she not transition back?
I don't know. So from what I
think
know,
she transitioned back and said
she
doesn't care.
This is so. From my current knowledge, so I may be out of date as of right now. They were going on non-binary and were using she, her pronouns. I don't know about any kind of actual physical transition, as in like getting surgery or hormones or anything.
That's fine. But point being is that she went full dark side, became a polytheist, and just basically lambasted anybody that she thought could give her a leg up, and threw everybody that was friends with her under the bus for whatever reason. Nobody knows why. Maybe Lawrence does.
Oh, we don't know. There was like something that went down.
I'm a good boy.
Well, wait, we don't even know what happened. There was just like
We
some
don't.
like they made some kind of list about how like we're all anti-trans channels or something like
Yeah.
that. But they never spoke to us, and then when we saw it and went, "Hey, what the hell?" They still never spoke to us but took the list down.
Yeah, they
So
deleted
I
it.
don't Yeah, they took it down. So I
Yeah.
don't know what ended up happening with that. And I
Yeah.
never heard
It was a
anything.
very
So.
bizarre attack out of nowhere on her blog.
It was strange. Yeah,
Nobody
it was
understood it,
right out of
but
left field. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you think you get along with people, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get a blog entry about you being transphobic or homophobic or a Trump supporter or bigot or whatever, and it's just like, what the hell? I mean, we expect it from shitty people. Don't get me wrong. Look what Matt Powell does. To character assassinate people, but. When you have somebody that you bring into your channels and you talk to and you think may not be your best by any stretch of imagination, but you don't have any animosity toward it at all, and you probably would consider them at least a friend, online friend, and then all of a sudden they just shit on you because they want to get clout in their new groupies that they're hanging out with. I don't get it, but I've seen it happen more than one occasion. We saw it with Nick Suter. Perfect example of that happening.
To be fair, Steve, you're also a pretty easy target because you're also pretty prickly, or at least you can be.
I'm blunt.
Yeah.
But you know what? I know people. You're Australian. You're blunt as fuck. I love you.
Yeah, it's because I ceased to give a fuck at this point.
And I like that. People like you that are direct. I mean, I get along with Australians for that very reason. You and Red Eye and Atheist Pastor. Yeah, y'all don't give a fuck. And you're just say what you want to say, and then you talk about it. I have the utmost respect for that.
Some people are just easier targets than others, and Steve historically has been an easy target that flips out a little bit sometimes, and so people latch onto that.
Yeah, well, I only do that when they go after people I care about nowadays. So I mean, I've completely ignored it this whole year, like everything.
Yeah, you've gotten a lot better at it.
They did target you. They did try targeting you for a while, but it really didn't work in their favor. So they kind of backed off that. They're like, let's try a different approach here.
Oh yeah, I had there was an attempt at revenge porn. There was people saying I had sex with my dog.
Revenge porn that wasn't even you. That's the.
I was a Nazi baby killer. I don't know. They tried a few things. It doesn't.
I knew it.
Oh right. Oh no. I've been exposed. I've been defeated.
Well, Lawrence has had his share. I mean, he hasn't really been gone after, but they do think he's a crypto theist. So
yeah, that's always.
I love that term. Crypto theist.
Crypto Christian. Yeah, that's
crypto Christian. There you go, crypto Christian. That is a great term, actually.
Because I won't say something like the Bible is totally bullshit. That makes me a crypto.
Well, neither will like Tim O'Neill. He's a historian. He finds value in the Bible. And so does Atheist Pastor.
If we cash you in and exchange you, how much Bitcoin would we get?
If you cash in what?
Oh, right, because
he's a crypto Christian.
Oh, crypto. Oh,
yeah. You're not gonna get much. The value just keeps going down. It's already.
To those who don't understand,
almost say that
crypto means hidden. By the way, crypto means hidden in this context.
That I am in a depression.
You know a theology is in a desperation state when they're starting to call people who are actually their enemies. Like,
I mean, look at Lawrence. He looks like Jesus. He's got to be a theist.
Shit.
Just so we're clear, that was an atheist saying that. They got mad and unsubscribed.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I get that all the time. Yeah. I have people. And look, you call it prickly dress. I just call it being blunt. But I have people that have accounts they've opened up 4 days ago, kind of thing, or like yesterday, come to my channel, go, I'm unsubscribing. I'm like, okay, this isn't LAX. You don't need to announce your departure, kind of thing. When an account that was literally created yesterday, and even people that have been around for a while that say, look, I've listened for a long time. I'm still going to ask you for evidence of things. And I've had a person who's like, I've watched you for a long while, but this, you said this isn't true. I'm like, okay, great. Let's discuss this. What is your evidence to back this? What is your argument? And they never give it. And so, I'm happy if people stick around. I'm happy if they don't, but I'm certainly not going to like capitulate my positions merely because you tell me I'm wrong without a shred of evidence to support it. That's just silly. Who does that? And if somebody wants to watch something else, and go watch something else. I mean, if people go to Lawrence's channel and they say, hey, I want to learn about the Bible, they're going to learn about the Bible because they do a great job explaining the Bible. But they go in going, you're a closet theist promoting Christianity, he's probably going to say, fuck off.
Yeah, I've been called a lot of things polar opposites. So there's crypto Christian, and then there are people who think that I hate Christians, and then I'm also anti-Semitic. So it really goes both ways.
You can't win, can you? Yeah.
No way to.
I get
do
that
that.
too. I've been told I hate Christianity and I hate religion, and the other side, I'm a closet theist that's trying to promote my, cult of critical thinking in order to infiltrate the ranks.
I'll say it. Fuck religion.
Well, I understand. Look, I understand
why
why the people will be against religion. I think anti-theists, when it comes to the axiology of theology, do make some pretty decent arguments that need to be addressed. Right? They do call out things that need to be answered. I don't have a problem with that, man.
I'd like to clarify, because I'm not even sure if anti-theist accurately describes me, because I'd like to clarify for people like Lord Bryant in the chat. I'm not sure if he's still here or if he left, but I'm not necessarily against a single individual believing in something that could be hokey pokey. Like, could not care less.
Yeah.
I care when massive, influential, like politically swaying organizations that are essentially pedophile rings, such as the Catholic Church, existing.
Yeah, and I call that secularism. In fact,
that organization deserves nothing less than being torn down brick by brick.
I tell you, Rez,
there's a difference. We were talking about that with Dr. Russell the other day. It's the separation between the discussion about whether or not God exists and how religion and organized religion should carry themselves and behave. And what's acceptable and what isn't.
Absolutely. I had a guy, I'm again not going to mention his name, but if somebody who said, "Hey, Steve, give me some details about this nonsense shit that people are talking about with this whole rape apologetics thing." And, I showed him all the tweets that I had from the Catholic Church. He could not agree with me more. And he recognized instantly how dumb their arguments were and how on point my arguments were, because I did call out the Catholic Church for that very thing. And I have a very strong passion against the Catholic Church for what happened, for that very thing, Rez. And so for them to try to label me something that I'm clearly not just showed how desperate they were to try to try to find something to criticize me about, to kind of slander me. And this person recognized this pretty instantly after reading all my tweets. Hasn't said anything about it since. It was just like, yeah, they're fucked up. They're stupid, right? I mean, they're just clearly people that are not somebody that I can trust. And since I gave him all the evidence and I explained to him that stuff, people will recognize, hey, who gives me the evidence? But I'm on board with that. And I think there's reasons to call out the Catholic Church. I think there's reasons to call out religion. But I'm also, I do understand Adam Friendly's argument, Adam Friended, that there might be aspects of religion that are beneficial to society, right? And so maybe we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater as a whole just yet.
Well, I mean, that sort of speaks more to the social aspect of like gathering at a building with like people who have become your friends over a long period of time. Like, that's got less to do with religion. That's just more social interaction.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I believe in secularism, right? I believe in a strong separation between church and state, and I want creation out of schools. And I think that most atheists probably would agree with that.
Organized religion has no place in politics, and it should fuck off.
Yeah, no, I agree with you as well. The whole evangelical base getting
I think
Trump
a lot of theists actually agree with
Right.
that. I know some theists in my real life that are like, yeah, no, absolutely not. But there's, like I said, there's a separation between having those discussions, and it doesn't make sense to, or at least I don't think it's very pragmatic. So now we're into utility, right? The utility discussion of using like the lack-thee as a position, or the utility of having the discussion and trying to attack somebody's political views by attacking whether or not a god exists, which is a far more difficult position to try and change somebody's mind on, where like now you're attaching all of these political views to that belief of a god, and you don't need to change or discuss that to change somebody's political view.
Right.
If you care about them as a person and you care about what they believe and whether or not it's correct or a good or a solid way of viewing the world or thinking, that's fine. It's just a separate discussion about politics and religion, or about what religion religious fundamentalism can get away with when it comes to like taxation or when it comes to, you know, kids.
Well, how bad do you think the evangelical base got burned by supporting Trump and saying he was going to get reelected, and people are going, "Oh, I know I prayed and God told me he's going to get reelected." I mean, don't people go, "Hey, maybe these people don't know what the hell they're talking about"? Maybe.
I don't know. I think the fact that like Trump got elected in the first place was such a fundamentalism mentality, and is extremely worrying. I don't think the fact that he lost the second election means that we're on a path to a better place. I just think it means that he sort of shot himself in the foot,
Sure.
like over and over and over again. So like if he hadn't done that, he probably would have won again.
By the way, Jamie says, my church has universities all around the globe and hospitals, young creationists too. What do you make of that? They are private, of course, and he is a young creationist. But here's the thing, Jamie, I guarantee it. Go to any one of those hospitals, not one of them uses the Bible or young earth creationism to heal anybody. They all have to accept the fact that evolution is legit, is an actual theory that works, because everything they do is predicated upon evolution.
Well, you also run into the problem of if that particular branch and that particular version of Christianity is correct, then why is there not a singular faith healing hospital?
Yeah, and it never will be.
One even exists.
Because they probably have tried them before, and guess what they found out? It doesn't work.
Nothing
People
happens.
Die. When your patients die and you don't make money off of it, that's not a good business model.
What I really hate though is like fucking religious fundamentalists like saying shit like, oh, when the kid dies of cancer, that's God's will, but also this other kid survived cancer, that's also God's will. Oh, how fucking convenient.
Yeah,
Fuck off
I
with that shit.
I don't like those things either. That's just showing a lack of empathy when people say things like that. Right.
And never mind like the years of practice it takes for those doctors to actually treat people like that, and it's got nothing to do with them, right?
Yeah,
There are
I'm
people
okay with
who
people
have
saying
been arrested for negligence because they prayed instead of administering medical assistance in hospitals.
Good, that should be fucking arrestable.
I think it should be arrestable. Now, do I care if they pray and have medicine? No. If it makes them feel better, I don't care. That's irrelevant to me. But I guarantee it, the medicine will work without the prayer, but the prayer will not work without the medicine.
100%.
We might have to have a conversation with Anastasia. Why does medicine necessitate evolution? It's not computing.
By the way, you can
That's
quote
not
me on that,
computing.
people. You can quote me.
What?
Yeah, we should.
Without
have
evolution,
Anastasia
you don't
on.
have germ theory.
No, well, Anastasia, here's the thing. Anastasia is one of the most open-minded people I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
She loves having
she's
these
super cool.
topics. She does not shy away from the hard shit. Matter of fact, she dives right in and says, "Okay, let's deal with this fuckery and let's talk about it."
I think
she's
we
just
should
not
have
afraid
her
of it
on.
at all.
I think we should have her on to talk about it, because then she can ask her questions and we won't be like delayed by chat if we're going to talk about it.
She asked, "Well, why does medicine necessitate evolution?" Because all of evolution is predicated upon commonalities between anatomy,
Modern
and
medicine,
proteomics,
modern
and
medicine,
phylogeny, and
yeah.
condistics, and
biology
and anatomy.
Modern medicine and modern cures work on are predicated on so much biology that requires
where do they test these things on?
Evolution to be able to.
They test them on animals because of the relationship there. We have common ancestry, obviously. Well, she is blonde, so she said her brain fell out from open-mindedness. It's a common occurrence among blondes. They just all of a sudden hit the threshold of thinking, and this brain just pops out
she
like a
also
zit.
then
Like a
said,
zit
and
pop.
I've never used.
Yeah.
So sexist, Steve. How could you?
Exactly. Yeah.
She also just said, and I've never used the word fuckery. I guess until now.
Yeah, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor, Anastasia. Yeah,
it's funny actually, because the existence of CV19 actually proves evolution. So funny that.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, same with like SARS and like the changes over in the UK and like any kind of vaccination for like any HIV, like basically the flu vaccine, anything that's like related to that kind of stuff is all absolutely you need evolution. And then there's also like whether or not you're able to recognize any kind of problems before childbirth, whether or not you're able to recognize the symptoms of any kind of disease is predicated on having knowledge of that disease, and if a disease changes, can you still recognize it, and et cetera, et cetera.
And by the way, Helios says that isn't 100% true. The psychosomatic effect is amazingly powerful, so sometimes prayer can heal through the power because the person believes it or turn up. But then there's the rub. That's not prayer doing it. Right, we understand psychosomatic effects is a real legitimate thing in science. So prayer's not going to heal anybody. It's the psychosomatic effect on the body that's actually doing the work.
There's also a really big difference between praying and having somebody feel better and faith healing.
Yeah, if the person's unconscious and doesn't have any
healing had anything, I should be able to go for a broken leg, and my leg should be not broken, not maybe heal a little bit faster. And there's also some of the testing that has been done. I covered one of these a while ago, and it was admittedly a small test group. Like, it wasn't that massive, but what ended up happening is that they split up the groups, as you do for a scientific experiment, and said there's these people that are getting prayed for that know, these people are getting prayed for that they don't know they're getting prayed for, these people aren't getting prayed for, and these people are, etc., like all the way down the line. And when they had separated in these groups, the healing was actually worse for the people who were getting prayed for and knew they were getting prayed for, and that was the only real difference in amongst within regular variables. And the reason was because it was adding additional stress onto the patients, because they were expected to heal faster, or they were expected this, or why am I not healing faster because of this? It had to do with the psychosomatic of knowing that you're being prayed for. And there was also a group that they were told they were getting prayed for and weren't, and same thing.
Well, yeah, and also if a person's unconscious, they're going to have psychosomatic effects if they do not know if they're being prayed for or not.
Right.
But the point is that as you pointed out, nobody's going to get their leg healed because of prayer, right? None of those are never going to happen. And when you have these egregious monsters like Benny Hinn that will say, have faith, blah, 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 and they have the adrenaline going, and then when the person leaves and they start feeling miserable again, and they throw away their medication, they're like, oh, well, you just didn't have enough faith to sustain it after that, and which is, just to me, just evil.
That's cruel. Prayer was never meant to replace medicine. Why not?
Also, Jamie Russell, all religions are cults. Not all cults are religions.
Okay, there is.
I would say by like a more traditional definition, yes.
I grew up with. Okay, and I can't really.
A religion is just a cult with a franchise.
I can't verify this, but I had the understanding that religion, under the strictest terms, was formal, venerable worship, and or a cult would be any kind of religion would have been a cult back in a certain time. That's how the word was used. It didn't have the connotations it has now of some kind of brainwashing, mental manipulation, isolation thing. So the word has changed because both of them refer to formal, venerable worship. And so words change, right?
Two things I just want to touch on real quick is if they did work, I assume Jamie means prayer. If prayer did work, how would you know, basically? And then you wouldn't believe if it had happened. First off, don't do shit like that. Don't tell us what we would and would not believe. It's rude and we don't appreciate it. Second off, how would you know? The answer is they were watching and monitoring their rate of healing, how they were healing, how they felt, right? So they would be asking them, and then they would be tracking how well they were healing and at what rate and what speed, because you can take a picture and see how a cut heals, right? So it wasn't like some random, let's see when they're done and we take the cast off. No, it's not arbitrary, right? Like, how long it takes a bone to heal.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It was based off of that. So that's why.
So a little off topic, but I think people would find it amusing. Recently, we were reading on the show The Alphabet of Ben Sira. So Ben Sira was a 2nd century BCE teacher, basically. But this book, The Alphabet of Ben Sira, was written around 1000 CE, maybe a little bit earlier. But it's an ancient Jewish parody, and it is hysterical. Would you like me to read an excerpt from this? Because I think it's very entertaining.
Yeah, go ahead.
And remember, keep in mind, this is a parody. The guy who wrote this, I think he was like, he was joking. He was kind of like taking like all the ways that that rabbis, Talmudic authors, how they rationalize things, and he kind of like amped it up a lot. Like, I think that was his purpose of writing the whole text. But okay, here's the excerpt. It is said that Ben Sira's mother was the daughter of Jeremiah, which, by the way, chronologically speaking, that's hundreds of years later. One day, Jeremiah went to the bathhouse and found wicked men from the tribe of Ephraim, who, he saw, were all masturbating. For the entire tribe of Ephraim of that generation was wicked. As soon as he saw them, Jeremiah began to admonish them. They immediately rose against him. Why do you admonish us? As the way to Beersheba lives, you will not leave this place until you join us. Leave me alone, cried Jeremiah. I swear to you, I will never reveal this. Did not Hezekiah see Nebuchadnezzar eating a hare? They responded, and swear to him by divine decree that he would not reveal it, and yet he broke his oath. You will do the same. If you now join us, fine. If not, we will sodomize you, just as our ancestors used to do to their idol worship, or in their idol worship. For if they did this with idols, you can be certain we will do it to you. In fear and dread, Jeremiah acquiesced. As soon as he left the bathhouse, he cursed his day, as it is said, "Cursed be the day on which I was born." Jeremiah went and fasted on this account 248 days, the number of days corresponding to the limbs in the human body. As for that righteous man's semen, the drop was preserved until Jeremiah's own daughter came to the bathhouse, and it entered her vagina. 7 months later, she gave birth to a baby boy who was born with teeth and with fully developed powers of speech.
Where's this story from?
Oh, damn.
This is from The Alphabet of Ben Sira, an ancient Jewish parody, probably the earliest parody in Jewish literature.
That's pretty intense, man.
I
I understand the story too. That's why it's like, I can actually see that being in the Bible, believe it or not.
No, definitely not in the Bible.
I don't know, but I can actually see it, something like that being something that people would write about what could happen in the Bible, right? I mean,
yeah. So
you caught us jerking off, man. Join us, or we're going to sodomize you, and you spill your seed, and then a year later, somebody gets pregnant. Okay, sounds legit.
His own daughter. The thing is, he got his own daughter. Well,
look what happened to Lot
in that story.
Yeah,
because he couldn't have sex with her. That wasn't allowed. So instead, the author of the alphabet chose this route.
Yeah.
So it's
creative writing.
Yeah, definitely creative writing. Definitely one of the funniest things we have read on the show, and the whole book is just hysterical.
Yeah, Healer says, "What the hell's wrong with the story?" A lot, a lot. But anyways, all right, let's wrap this up, guys. I think I've got enough. Lawrence, I'm going to reach out to you later today. I'll get you the information about when we're on and get you in contact with Anastasia, and you guys can communicate. She kind of trusts my opinion. I don't know why. Silly her. But I know you're legit on this. I know that you're knowledgeable as hell, and I think you would be great on the show because you're very even keel. We want to have people on that are not going to be aggressive. And confrontational. The show's not about confrontation. It's about having conflict, but able to discuss the conflict from vastly different positions, right? And I know you're able to do that because I've seen it. So, all right. So I'll do that later on with you.
I'm sorry for derailing, but I am convinced that soap is the answer to all of these problems.
Salvation through soap.
Wash your damn hands. And I do think we should look to have Anastasia come on and maybe and we'll talk about evolution and
Oh, yeah, we'll
medicine
have her-
and
we'll have her
biology and how that actually works. Because I think she's a wonderful and smart lady who has really good questions a lot of the time and isn't going to be what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe obstinate,
She's too damn smart sometimes.
purposefully obtuse about she's not going to be a jerk about having the conversation, and I think that's great in general.
We've had many in-depth conversations, and I'm like, okay, I'm out of my depths here. I better whatever. But maybe for that shirt, maybe you can add to it. Soap is soap greater than salvation. Jesus wants you to wash your damn ass. Jesus says, "Wash your ass."
It's getting kind of long. Jesus said, "Wash your ass."
Wash your ass. Jesus says,
Is
"Wash your ass."
there a corresponding Bible verse I could put with that?
I'm sure if there is one, Lawrence will find it.
It just
I don't think so.
if we can find it, I'll just put wash your ass, Jesus probably.
we recently put a Bible verse on one of our shirts. It was the everything is meaningless, completely meaningless from Ecclesiastes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I like the
Ecclesiastes
nothing...
1:6.
No, that verse specifically is like 1:2.
Okay. It was in one, somewhere in there.
Yeah, but it's just brilliant stuff.
Why didn't God tell them about beer? Yeah, what the fuck, God?
Yeah, he told the Egyptians.
Yeah, hey, look,
Yeah,
if I have to choose between beer and soap, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have to think about that.
Heavier liquor can
can
be
use
used
beer
as
as soap,
disinfectant.
right?
Come on, yeah.
Yes, I mean, beer kind of covers both bases, doesn't it? It has alcohol in it.
They
Works as
had
well.
plenty of wine in ancient Israel.
You're talking about cleaning sin a lot. Use soap.
I would bathe in wine just to try it out once. Wouldn't you?
No.
Really?
I would, and then
probably-
I would drink it, so I could.
Ooh, that's just wrong.
I could
Probably pass
ingest
out
my
from
own
the
filth.
fumes and
See,
drown.
Cheshire would sell it. She'd be like, "Hey, here's my dirty bath water, which is not water; it's dirty bath wine."
I stood in inside of a 5-gallon
God.
bucket. I took this bottle of wine and I poured it over my head, so it all landed in the bucket. I am now selling you bottles from that bucket.
I wouldn't even drink wine that's been stomped on. That's so wrong. I understand that's how they did back then, and that's whatever. But I wouldn't drink it. That's just me.
I mean, they didn't really have another method that was viable.
Ever heard of a grape press?
Soap.
Soap was the method. All right, guys,
Then you
thanks
got
for watching
soap in
this.
your wine.
Anybody got to promote anything coming up? Cheshire, throw your last video in the live chat so people can watch that afterwards.
Oh.
And then Lawrence, what do you got coming up on your show?
Well, let's see. This week, if I get the book in on time, we will be starting the Wisdom of Solomon on our Friday show, and we will be continuing Jeremiah on our Sunday show. I'm also working on a couple videos. Hopefully, I get the script for my video on Akhenaten done. For anyone that doesn't know who Akhenaten is, ancient Egyptian pharaoh, first monotheist. He tried that out for about a generation, or for not even a generation, maybe the rest of his lifetime. Didn't really work out so well. So I'm going to talk about Akhenaten, the heretic king.
Because he got a lot of shit for that, I would assume.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, at the time, there wasn't really much people could do about it, but then he died, and then they were like, okay, we're going back. And also been working for a very long time on a video about the historicity of the patriarchs. And this one takes a lot of research because I have to learn a lot about 2 millennia, the first and second millennia BCE, because the whole thing is you have to try to place these texts at a certain time. You have to try to figure out when would it make more sense for somebody to write this. Is there anything historical that couldn't have happened at a certain time and could at a different time? Stuff like that. So it's a lot more research intensive, probably going to be broken up into multiple episodes. But yeah, that's
Awesome.
that's why I got
All right, buddy. All right, Raz, you got anything you want out there besides religion sucks for you? What you could?
Religion sucks.
Yeah, that's fine.
I put the link to the stream I just finished. It was really good, so I recommend checking it out. It was a grand old time. I also put my channel because I'm going to be live tomorrow talking a little bit about a little bit of a mix of atheism and mostly like Twitter atheists, and where the communication just breaks the hell down on Twitter. So I'm gonna be looking at
Oh
like
God, please,
big,
I love that.
looking at
Do
a
it.
big
Do it up.
long Twitter thread, and
Do
we're just gonna
it.
go through and talk about that nonsense because
Yeah.
it's nonsense.
I think Twitter. I think somebody should do a PhD thesis on Twitter. I really do. I don't know what I got planned over the next 2 days. Probably not much of anything, but I am going to be out of town. I think on Saturday and Sunday, so I won't be streaming or heard from or in communication probably on Saturday and Sunday. I know that's everybody loves that. Like, oh yay! No shit from Steve on Twitter. Maybe I might throw something out, but I am going to be, like I said, taking a little time vacation out of town for 2 days. Give or take, for the most part. And with that, thank you guys for watching. I will get with you, Lawrence, afterwards.
I want to get Anastasia and Karma in a stream at the same time. If you two can both come to my channel, that'd be great. Okay, thanks. Bye.
That would be brutal,
It's
actually. That would be a head-to-head. Yeah, that's like celebrity death match right there.
Bring soap.
Bring soap. There you go. Say that again, and let me leave it at that, Chess. Say it again.
Bring soap.